Have you ever seen a team lose by more than 30 points? And then walk into the press conference acting like the biggest reason was the officiating? That's exactly what happened after the Indiana Fever dismantled the Las Vegas Aces. Instead of the conversation being about Caitlin Clark's return, Kelsey Mitchell's incredible scoring streak, or Indiana's complete team performance, the spotlight quickly shifted to comments about the referees, physical play, and even illegal screens. But here's the question everyone started asking afterward. Were those complaints actually justified, or were they simply a reaction to one of the Aces' toughest losses of the season? Once you look at what really happened over those 40 minutes, the story becomes a lot more interesting. Before the game even tipped off, there was already plenty of attention on Caitlin Clark. After missing time with a back injury, she was finally back in the lineup, but there was one important catch. Indiana had no plans to let her play a full game. The coaching staff kept her on a strict minutes restriction, meaning she would only see the floor for around half the contest. Normally, that's the kind of situation that makes a team nervous. When your biggest star is limited, every possession becomes a challenge. Las Vegas had every reason to feel confident. They were facing a Fever team whose best-known player wouldn't even be available for the entire game. On paper, it looked like the perfect opportunity to take control early and force Indiana to chase the game. Instead, the exact opposite happened. From the opening tip, Indiana played with an energy that caught everyone by surprise. They weren't waiting for Clark to take over. They weren't relying on one player to carry the offense. Every possession looked organized, every defensive rotation arrived on time, and every player seemed ready for the moment. Before long, the Fever had built an early lead, and something unusual started happening. The Aces never recovered. Not once did Las Vegas grab the lead. Not for a single possession. That's what makes this game different from a typical upset. There wasn't a dramatic comeback. There wasn't one lucky quarter where everything suddenly clicked. Indiana controlled the pace from start to finish, slowly adding to its advantage until the scoreboard became impossible to ignore. Every time the Aces looked like they might put together a run, the Fever answered immediately. And that answer didn't always come from Caitlin Clark. One of the biggest reasons Indiana stayed in control was Aaliyah Boston. While most fans were focused on Clark's return, Boston quietly went to work against one of the toughest assignments in basketball, guarding A'ja Wilson. Anyone who has watched Wilson over the past few seasons knows how difficult that challenge is. She's one of the league's most dominant players, capable of taking over games with her scoring, rebounding, and defense. Boston never backed down. Instead of giving Wilson easy touches around the basket, she made every possession physical and every shot difficult. She battled for rebounds, protected the paint, and forced Wilson to earn everything. That effort didn't always show up in highlight clips, but it completely changed the rhythm of the game. While Boston handled business inside, Indiana started stretching the floor on the other end. Even with limited minutes, Clark immediately reminded everyone why defenses are forced to guard her the second she crosses half court. One deep three-pointer was enough to pull defenders farther away from the basket, opening driving lanes for her teammates. It wasn't about scoring 30 points. It was about changing how Las Vegas had to defend every possession. That's what separates great playmakers from great scorers. Even on a restricted workload, Clark's presence created opportunities that didn't always appear next to her name on the stat sheet. Every defender leaning toward her meant someone else was left with a cleaner look, and Indiana made sure those opportunities didn't go to waste. Kelsey Mitchell continued doing what she's quietly done all season, putting points on the board with incredible consistency. There was nothing flashy about the way she started. She simply took the shots the defense gave her, stayed patient, and let the game come to her. But as the quarters passed, those steady buckets turned into a scoring avalanche. By the second half, Mitchell looked completely comfortable. Pull-up jumpers, drives to the basket, shots from beyond the arc. It didn't seem to matter what Las Vegas tried. She kept finding ways to score, and every basket pushed the Aces a little further behind. That's when the pressure really began to build, because once a team falls behind by double digits, every missed shot starts feeling heavier. Players begin rushing possessions, defenses gamble for steals, coaches burn timeouts searching for answers. Indiana sensed that frustration and kept. By the time the final buzzer sounded, the scoreboard said everything that needed to be said. Indiana hadn't escaped with a close win or stolen one at the end. They had completely controlled one of the league's premier teams from the opening tip until the clock hit 0. That's why the conversation after the game became so fascinating. One locker room was talking about execution, while the other was searching for explanations. During the post-game interviews, Fever players kept coming back to the same theme. Defense created offense. Good ball movement created open shots. Staying ready mattered because any player could be the one called upon to make the next big play. There wasn't much celebrating or trash talk. Instead, the message was simple. They trusted the game plan, and they trusted each other. That mindset has quietly become one of Indiana's biggest strengths. Earlier in the season, opponents could focus almost entirely on Caitlin Clark. Stop Clark, and you had a great chance of beating the Fever. But that version of Indiana doesn't seem to exist anymore. Teams now have to deal with Kelsey Mitchell attacking from everywhere on the floor, Aaliyah Boston controlling the paint, Sophie Cunningham stretching defenses with her shooting, and role players stepping up whenever their number is called. That's what makes this team so much more dangerous than it was just a few months ago. Even Clark herself wasn't interested in making the night about individual accomplishments. Returning from injury, playing under a minute's restriction, and still helping guide her team to such a convincing victory was enough. Instead of focusing on milestones or personal numbers, she spoke about getting healthy, building chemistry, and continuing to improve as the season moves forward. That attitude matched the tone of the entire locker room. No one sounded satisfied. No one acted like they had won a championship. They understood there was still plenty of basketball left to play. And maybe that's the most important takeaway from this entire game. Championship-caliber teams don't just celebrate big wins. They learn from them, build on them, and immediately turn their attention to the next challenge. Meanwhile, Las Vegas now finds itself facing questions it probably didn't expect to answer this early. Every great team goes through rough stretches during a long season, and one bad night doesn't suddenly erase years of success. The Aces have proven too much over the past few seasons for anyone to count them out. But losing by such a large margin, and then seeing many of the headlines focus on officiating instead of basketball, only added fuel to an already growing debate. Fans immediately split into two groups. Some believed the officials missed calls throughout the game, something that happens in almost every professional sport. Others pointed directly to the box score, arguing that shooting percentages, rebounding, defensive effort, and ball movement explained the outcome far better than any whistle ever could. That's what makes sports so compelling. People can watch the exact same game and walk away with completely different conclusions. One thing, however, is much harder to debate. Indiana earned this victory with outstanding basketball. They shared the ball. They defended with intensity. They knocked down open shots. They stayed composed whenever Las Vegas tried to build momentum. And perhaps most impressively, they accomplished all of that while their biggest star played limited minutes. That says a lot about where this roster is heading. Just a year ago, many critics questioned whether the Fever had enough depth to compete with the league's elite teams. Today, that conversation feels very different. When 6 different players can score in double figures, opponents can't simply build one defensive game plan around a single superstar. That's how dangerous teams are built. Every player understands their role. Every possession has purpose. Every game presents a new hero. As the regular season continues, this performance may end up being remembered for much more than the final score. It could be the night the rest of the league realized Indiana isn't simply an exciting young team anymore. They're becoming a legitimate contender. Of course, one dominant win doesn't guarantee future success. The toughest part isn't reaching this level, it's staying there. Every opponent will now study this game, searching for ways to slow Indiana down. Expectations will only continue to rise, and every nationally televised matchup will bring even more pressure. The real test begins now. Can the Fever keep playing with this level of confidence? Can they continue getting contributions from every corner of the roster? And can they prove this wasn't just one unforgettable night, but the beginning of something much bigger? Those answers will come over the next several weeks. But for one evening in Las Vegas, there was no mice.